Welcome to the Devil's Digest Spring Game Recap. My name's Nick Borgia. I'm joined alongside publisher Ho Urbino. Behind us, we've got the David Fulcher football camp going on, but we're going to talk about the spring game that just happened here at Sun Devil Stadium. So, Hode, let's start. The spring game typically doesn't accurately reflect the past 14 sessions in the spring. Would you say that was the case out here today?
Yeah, actually, I think, Nick, that this really did reflect what we saw in the preceding 14 sessions, just because the defense has been ahead of the offense. So don't get me wrong, I don't think the offense really faltered day in and day out during the spring, but I feel that there are some more depth issues that need to be figured out on the offense, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the defense, I think, is pretty much set. Maybe just one or two puzzle pieces that need to be put in. But I think that there's definitely some players that an offense that really impressed. Cam Scatterbo, who was one of two running backs for Arizona State today, healthy and ready to go. So they were really grinding him and Javen Jacobs quite a bit. But I thought that especially Scatterbo and even Jacobs at some periods really did play well. I don't think it would be a complete spring game if we didn't see like one huge play by Jalen Conyers. In my eyes, the best tight end in the Pac-12, one of the best in the country, a 60-yard touchdown reception from quarterback Drew Pine. So he's somebody that you can count on all the time. But I think also, some big plays from Elijah Badger, Xavier Guillory, the wide receivers. And as far as a quarterback, I know we talked about it a lot, but I think that it really is still setting up to be Trent Bourguet, the returning starter, being the starter in 2023. So definitely there were some highlights on offense, but I think on defense, B.J. Green, especially I think in the first couple of series, it looks like whenever there was a big defensive play that he was there to have it. So to me, that definitely was a continuation of what we saw from the 14 preceding sessions, because B.J. Green is definitely one of the standouts on defense. We saw Jordan Clark, who missed some of spring due to injury, but had an interception today. We saw great safety play by guys like Xavier Alford and Shamari Simmons. So again, defense I think definitely was a continuation. Offense maybe somewhat of a continuation, just because I think that's one area of the ball that really does have improving to do between now and August.
So let's talk about getting into August. Do you think this offense is set in stone in any way as we head into preseason camp in August? Well,
some of the playmakers that I mentioned earlier, quarterback Trent Bourguet, tight end Jalen Conyers. I'd also throw Messiah Swinson and Bryce Pierre as other good tight ends. Wide receivers, Xavier Guillory, Elijah Badger, Melquan Stovall. These are definitely playmakers that you're gladly going to go to war with. Then we talk about the running backs like Cam Scatterbo, Javen Jacobs, but DeCarlos Brooks definitely had a good spring. Tevin White and George Hall as running backs. Coach Anaguano said early in the spring were a little banged up, so didn't get to do a whole lot. But really, to me, it's an offensive line, Nick, and it's an offensive line that did not have two of its starters throughout the spring, is looking for help in the transfer portal. Already was able to find some help, and I think between now and April 30th, definitely going to need to shore it up, probably with two more offensive linemen, probably both at tackle and guard, I think. But if this offensive line can really come together in August, again, I feel there's just like way too much firepower around them to screw this up and not to have this offense be much more explosive than last year, and really perhaps one of the best, or most explosive, I should say, offenses we've seen in Tempe in a long time.
All right, so now let's look at the defense. Coming into spring ball, we've talked about this before, how there were a lot of questions surrounding the defensive line, and the linebackers groups. Not so much about the secondary. But now that spring ball is over, would you say that storyline is, continue to be true?
Well, let's put it this way, Nick. When you talk about the defensive line, I think from the edge position, there's definitely should not be any concerns whatsoever. One of their best defensive linemen, defensive ends, I should say, Michael Matus, was out with the spring still rehabbing from his ACL. And you still saw a defensive end group that absolutely did not miss a beat whatsoever. B.J. Green, as we mentioned earlier, Clayton Smith, Elijah O'Neal, Prince Dorba. All just edge players that really shined quite a bit in the spring. So I think if you're an ASU fan, you can definitely realistically expect a much better job rushing the quarterback, definitely better than it was than last year. The interior of the defensive line, I think, has less question marks now than it did in the beginning of the spring. I was really impressed with C.J. Fight, a true freshman who really hit the ground running and then some in the spring. A guy like Robbie Harrison, We saw Anthony Cooper move from the outside to the inside, and I think played pretty well there too. So I think the interior defensive line is maybe still one position they're going to look for some help in the transfer portal. But I think that when you talk about the staff, they feel much better about the interior defensive line now at practice number 15 than they did at practice number 1. As far as the linebackers, I mean, I think that the starting tandem, and it is going to be a 4-2-5, just to reiterate, of Will Schaefer and Trevion Brown is really as solid a starting linebacker group that you'll see in the Pac-12. But the depth behind them, maybe there were some questions. I think a guy like James Joncom really shined in the spring and is a very, very formidable backup. And guys like Caleb McCullough, Tate Romney, and Crew Jackson, I think those are guys that really, as far as providing a good depth of linebacker, I think really answered the call in the spring. But again, I mean, if you're going to get one more guy in the transfer portal, to really just deepen this linebacker group, I don't think that would be a bad move at all. The secondary, I'm really impressed with the safeties. I mean, Shamari Simmons, the transfer from Austin Peay, Xavier Alford, the transfer from USC. Those might be the two starting safeties right now, and I think have done an excellent job. And you still have a guy like Jordan Clark, who could definitely be a great nickelback. I think R.J. Reagan at times, Willie Harris at times, were also performing very well at the nickelback position. You still got Chris Edmonds from last year, really just providing good depth at the safety position. So that's one position that I think you're not really too concerned at all going into August. When it comes to cornerbacks, I think Ro Torrance, the starter from last year, definitely one of the best cornerbacks in the Pac-12. Who's going to start opposite to him, whether it's Mason Williams, whether it's Ed Woods, maybe somebody again from the portal, remains to be seen. But I think overall that the coaches feel just as good about the secondary now than they did in the beginning. And I think that the defensive line, especially at the edge, has probably provided a very pleasant surprise for the coaching staff at the end of spring practice.
All right, Hode, so this has been our first real look at Kenny Dillingham throughout this spring. If you're an ASU fan, how should you be feeling right now? I mean, what other work really needs to get done as the team heads into August?
Well, look, I mean, I know the spring's a time of year where you're still undefeated and everybody's excited about what lies ahead for the program, but when you talk about establishing a team culture and just establishing just really the whole mindset of the team, I think Kenny Dillingham has been very productive, in that sense. I think I said it before that he just really knows which buttons to push and which buttons not to push. So just because they're having fun over here, not only today in spring game, but really throughout the spring practice, that doesn't mean that they don't work hard. Doesn't mean that Kenny Dillingham doesn't demand accountability, doesn't really harp on the little things like running between segments in practice. So I think that, people think that Kenny Dillingham is just 100% player's coach and not really employing any discipline would be greatly mistaken. I just think that Kenny Dillingham, being as young as he is really able to find that balance, find that golden path, if you will, between being a very hard and disciplined coach and being an absolute just a player's coach. So I think that balance is what this team needed, and I think just the coaching staff in general, and just what we're seeing as far as the new playbook, which obviously can't go into great detail over here, but an offense and defense really provides a lot of promise. I understand ASU did not play one game yet, but the fact that they do have 8 home games, the fact that they do have just a lot of new pieces that I think have really assimilated quite well, I think there definitely is some hope for this team, to play better, maybe even to be bowl eligible. And I'm not saying it's a goal that really should, elicit much excitement around the fan base, but it is going to be a process to get this team better and better from the hole that they were in 2022. And I think Kenny Dillingham is definitely marching this team in the right direction. Again, you go back to the transfer portal, a few pieces that need to be inserted on offensive line, defensive line, perhaps linebacker too, is really what can really be the difference between a good team and a great team in Tempe. But again, I think if you're an ASU fan, there's definitely a lot to be excited about what Kenny Dillingham has done up until spring practice and now throughout spring practice. It's definitely moving in the right direction, and you have to have some kind of foundation in place to really make a marked improvement. I think Kenny Dillingham has definitely established that ever since he got hired in late November.
All right, well, that wraps it up for ASU football until August, but don't worry, that doesn't mean Devil's Digest is stopping anytime soon. All the coverage will continue throughout the summer, so make sure you're tapped in to DevilsDigest.com. Also drop a follow at Devil's Digest on Twitter. For Hoder Bino and the rest of our Devil's Digest staff, my name is Nick Borgia. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.